It was a calm, ordinary morning on Earth. People woke up to the sounds of birds chirping, cars honking, and children playing in their yards. The world was busy as usual, with people going about their daily routines. But in the vastness of space, far beyond the reach of Earth's telescopes, a storm was brewing. Unknown to humanity, a fleet of massive warships, unlike anything the Earth had ever seen, was hurtling toward their planet. The Vraxians had arrived. They were a race of cold, calculating beings, technologically advanced far beyond Earth's wildest imaginations. Their ships were sleek and menacing, designed for one purpose: domination. The Vraxians had conquered countless planets in their time, and now Earth had become their next target. Their mission was simple: take the planet, enslave its people, and claim the resources of the world for themselves. On the surface, it seemed like the start of an ordinary day, but as the first of the alien ships entered Earth's atmosphere, everything changed. The sky turned dark, and a deep, rumbling sound echoed across the land. People looked up, confused and frightened. They saw giant ships blocking out the sun, casting long shadows over cities and towns below. Panic began to spread as people realized that something extraordinary and terrifying was happening. The government scrambled to respond. Military forces around the world mobilized quickly, sending planes and soldiers to prepare for what seemed like an impossible situation. But the Vraxians were far ahead in technology. The human weapons, though powerful, were no match for the invaders. The Vraxian ships unleashed a storm of laser blasts, easily shooting down jets and decimating military bases in seconds. Within hours, major cities across the globe were under attack. Washington, Paris, Beijing, New Delhi. Every major capital was struck by the same terrifying force. Earth's defenses crumbled in the face of the superior alien technology. The world's leaders, now in hiding, could do little more than watch as their cities fell into chaos. The alien forces landed in key locations, securing their hold on Earth. They took control of communication systems, cutting off the world's ability to coordinate a defense. It was clear that the invaders intended to rule Earth without any challenge. Human civilization, which had once proudly stood as the dominant species on the planet, was now powerless against the Vraxians. In the midst of the chaos, people resisted. Small groups of civilians, soldiers, and survivors began to fight back in whatever way they could. But their efforts were disorganized and largely ineffective. The Vraxians moved swiftly, crushing any form of resistance they encountered. Human cities were abandoned or destroyed, and the once bustling streets were left empty. The Galactic Council, an organization composed of advanced species from various parts of the galaxy, watched from afar. They had long observed Earth, considering it a relatively primitive planet. The Council had always followed a strict policy of non-interference with less developed worlds, believing that each species should be left to find its own way. However, when the Vraxians invaded, the Council took notice. They had heard whispers of the alien race's growing power, and they knew that the Vraxians' plans for Earth would not stop with just this planet. Despite their power, the Vraxians were not invincible. The Galactic Council had always monitored the situation in the galaxy, keeping track of emerging threats. But the Council had no plans to intervene in Earth's conflict. They knew the Vraxians were a force to be reckoned with, and they believed humanity was too weak to pose a serious threat. Earth was on its own. As the days passed, the world began to change. In the aftermath of the invasion, people were rounded up and imprisoned, their homes taken over by alien forces. The human race was treated as little more than livestock by the Vraxians. Cities were transformed into alien strongholds, and the world was forced to adapt to a new and harsh reality. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's spirit did not die. Deep within the heart of the resistance, hidden from the eyes of the invaders, something began to stir. People who refused to submit to the Vraxians quietly began to gather. The fight for Earth had only just begun. The story of humanity's survival was about to unfold, and no one could predict how it would end. The invasion had only just begun, but already the Vraxians were starting to realize that Earth was not the easy conquest they had expected, and somewhere, deep within the heart of the planet, humanity was preparing to make its stand. The Galactic Council might have written them off, but they would soon learn that humanity had more fight left in them than anyone could imagine. Earth had fallen. The sky that was once filled with the light of the sun was now covered by the shadow of the Vraxian ships. The invaders had struck hard and fast, leaving no time for humanity to prepare. The world's greatest cities lay in ruins, and the people, once so proud of their achievements, now found themselves subjugated to the will of an alien force. Yet in the darkness of despair, there was a flicker of hope. Humanity's defiance was not dead. Across the globe, small groups of resistance fighters began to emerge. They were not soldiers, nor were they highly trained military units. These were ordinary people, farmers, doctors, teachers, students, and soldiers who had survived the first wave of the invasion. Each of them had lost something to the Vraxians: family, friends, homes, but they had not lost their will to fight. In the ruins of New York City, a group of survivors gathered in the basement of a destroyed building. Led by General Marcus Thornton, a seasoned military leader who had been in the thick of the invasion's initial battles, they began to form the first organized resistance. Marcus was no stranger to loss. His family had been killed in the first wave, and his city had been turned into a wasteland. But instead of succumbing to grief, he had channeled his pain into action. "We may be outgunned, outnumbered, and outclassed," he said, standing in front of a group of survivors, "but we are human, and we will not be cowed by these invaders. We fight for our homes, for our families, and for the future of our children." His words sparked a fire in the hearts of those around him. They might not have the weapons of the Vraxians, but they had something far more powerful: determination. Around the world, similar pockets of resistance began to form. In Europe, small bands of fighters took to the streets, using old weapons and makeshift devices to attack the Vraxian forces. In Africa, farmers and villagers used their knowledge of the land to set traps and ambush Vraxian patrols. In the ruins of Asia, people hacked into the alien communication systems, sending false signals and creating confusion among the invaders. The Vraxians, who had expected Earth's population to fall in line under their rule, were beginning to see that they had underestimated humanity. They had come with advanced technology, capable of crushing any army they faced. But they hadn't expected human ingenuity, the ability to adapt and survive, even in the face of overwhelming odds. One such example came from Dr. Emily Grant, a brilliant scientist who had worked on Earth's space program before the invasion. After the first wave, she had gone into hiding, but her mind was always focused on one thing: how could humans fight back? Working in secret, she and a small group of scientists developed a new kind of weapon, one that combined Earth's advanced technology with some of the Vraxian tech they had captured in the early days of the invasion. It wasn't a weapon of mass destruction, but it was something the Vraxians hadn't seen before. A small device that emitted powerful electromagnetic pulses, capable of temporarily disabling the Vraxian ship's shields and rendering their advanced weapons useless for a short time. It wasn't much, but it was a start. With these devices, the resistance started to strike back. They sabotaged supply lines, took down communication towers, and even managed to destroy a few smaller Vraxian ships. The Vraxians, who had once thought of humans as an insignificant species, now found themselves facing a growing threat. Back in New York, General Thornton's resistance movement was gathering more support. Word spread that humans were fighting back, and more people joined the cause. The Vraxians were powerful, but their grip on Earth was weakening, and humanity was starting to believe they could win. However, the Vraxians were not blind to the growing resistance. They began to retaliate with harsher methods. Whole villages were wiped out as examples to others, and human leaders were captured and publicly executed in an attempt to break the spirit of the resistance. But despite the pain and suffering, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. The Galactic Council, still watching from the shadows, had begun to take note of humanity's defiance. They had initially dismissed Earth as an insignificant planet, but now they saw something they had never expected: a species that refused to give up. Even with their technology, the Vraxians could not easily crush this spirit. As the resistance grew, so did humanity's confidence. General Thornton and Dr. Emily Grant, along with other leaders of the movement, began to plan larger, more coordinated attacks. They knew that they could not defeat the Vraxians in a head-on battle, but they could weaken them, confuse them, and make their presence known across the galaxy. The fight for Earth had only just begun, and the Vraxians were about to learn a harsh lesson. Humanity, when cornered, was capable of far more than anyone had ever imagined. The Vraxians were ruthless. After months of fighting, they had begun to grow accustomed to Earth's resistance. They understood the tactics humans used: guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and stealth, but they never fully realized the potential humanity held. Despite being outmatched, humans had one thing the Vraxians could never predict: their creativity and ability to adapt. In a forgotten corner of the Earth, far from the destruction caused by the Vraxians, something incredible was happening. Deep beneath the ground, hidden away from the prying eyes of the invaders, a secret was about to be uncovered. It was a secret that had been buried for centuries, lost in the annals of Earth's history. Dr. Emily Grant, the brilliant scientist who had become one of the leaders of the human resistance, was on a mission. She had been studying old texts, ancient maps, and forgotten records that spoke of a mysterious underground facility. It was said to be an old research lab, built by an ancient civilization long before the Vraxians ever arrived in the galaxy. The records were vague, but the possibility that something powerful could be hidden beneath the Earth's surface was too important to ignore. Emily's group of scientists and engineers had been working tirelessly to follow the clues, and they finally pinpointed the location of the facility. It was buried deep in the mountains of South America, far from the Vraxian-controlled cities. They had to move carefully, avoiding detection at all costs. If the Vraxians found out what they were searching for, the secret would be lost forever. Emily, along with a small group of resistance fighters, embarked on the dangerous journey to reach the site. They traveled through dense jungles, crossed rivers, and climbed mountains, all while staying one step ahead of the Vraxian patrols that scoured the land. The journey was grueling, and many of them wondered if the mission was even worth the risk. But Emily never wavered. She knew that if the stories were true, the weapon hidden beneath the Earth could be humanity's only chance of survival. After days of travel, they reached the site. It was a hidden entrance to an underground complex, cleverly disguised as a natural cave. Inside, they found a large metal door, covered in layers of dirt and rust. Emily's heart raced as she realized that they were standing in front of something that could change the course of the war. "Get the tools," Emily instructed, her voice steady despite the excitement bubbling within her. "We have to open this door." The team worked quickly, using old and improvised tools to break open the rusted door. It creaked as it opened, revealing a vast, dark hallway that stretched far into the depths of the Earth. The air inside was stale, but there was a strange hum in the atmosphere, something electric, like the pulse of energy waiting to be released. They made their way down the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they moved deeper, they came to a large chamber, its walls lined with strange symbols and glowing lights. The technology was beyond anything they had seen before. Some of the machines still hummed with power, their purpose unclear but clearly designed for something far beyond the scope of human understanding. At the center of the chamber stood a massive structure, a large cannon-like device that stretched from the floor to the ceiling. It looked like it had been built for a single immense purpose. As Emily and her team studied the device, they realized that it was a weapon, an energy cannon capable of disintegrating entire fleets. The Vraxians had never seen anything like it. "This is it," Emily whispered, her voice trembling with awe and fear. "This is our chance." The weapon had the potential to turn the tide of the war, but there was a catch. Its power was so immense that if used improperly, it could destroy not only the Vraxian fleet, but also the entire planet. It was a dangerous gamble, and Emily knew that it had to be handled carefully. After days of studying the weapon, the team was able to activate it. The machine hummed to life, and a bright blue light shot out from its core. The room seemed to tremble with energy. Emily's heart raced as she realized the enormity of what they had discovered. They had found something that could defeat the Vraxians, if they could use it in time. But there was another problem. The Vraxians were already aware of the Resistance's movements. It wouldn't be long before they discovered the location of the hidden weapon. Emily knew that they had to act fast. The weapon was their best hope, but it was also their most dangerous secret. If the Vraxians found it, they would use it against humanity. With the weapon now activated, the Resistance had one goal: get it to the surface and use it against the Vraxian fleet before it was too late. The clock was ticking, and the world's last hope rested on the shoulders of a few brave humans willing to risk everything. As Emily and her team prepared to leave the underground facility, the weight of their discovery settled in. They had uncovered Earth's greatest secret, but now they had to survive long enough to use it. The fight for Earth was far from over, and the true battle was only just beginning. The Vraxian forces had tightened their grip on Earth, and the Resistance, though growing stronger, was still only a shadow of the invaders' power. While humanity fought back with courage and ingenuity, the overwhelming force of the Vraxian fleet continued to cast a dark cloud over Earth. The once vibrant cities were now desolate, and survivors hid in the remnants of the world they had known. But as the war dragged on, something unexpected occurred. The Galactic Council, an alliance of the galaxy's most advanced species, had been watching Earth's struggle from the shadows. Until now, they had kept their distance, believing that the Vraxians would easily crush the human resistance. After all, they had watched as other planets had fallen to the Vraxian might, and they had no reason to believe that Earth would be any different. The Council's rule was simple: avoid interfering in the affairs of less developed worlds. They had seen the destruction caused by too much involvement in such conflicts. However, as the Resistance grew bolder and the Vraxians began to falter under the pressure, the Council took notice. They had underestimated humanity, and now they faced a difficult decision. Earth was no longer just a struggling, insignificant planet. The Resistance had sparked something far larger, a human spirit of defiance that even the Vraxians couldn't crush. And the Vraxians, enraged by the unexpected pushback, were beginning to lash out in ways that the Council could no longer ignore. In a decision that surprised both the Vraxians and the Resistance, the Galactic Council sent an emissary to Earth. The emissary was a tall, imposing figure from a species known as the Tsokra, whose technology was unmatched in the galaxy. The Tsokra had long been the voice of reason in the Council, known for their wisdom and cool-headed diplomacy. The emissary's arrival was heralded by a sudden silence across the planet. The Vraxians, who had previously dominated all communications, stepped back as the emissary broadcast a message to the people of Earth. "I come as the representative of the Galactic Council," the voice boomed across Earth's remaining communication systems. "The invasion of Earth by the Vraxians has become an unexpected problem. We have been monitoring your planet's conflict and are now ready to make an offer to end this war. The Vraxians have overstretched their resources and have been given a chance to prove themselves before the Council. If you cease all resistance and accept the rule of the Vraxians, the Council will guarantee the survival of your species and your planet. Refuse, and we will allow the Vraxians to finish their conquest." The message was clear. The Galactic Council was offering Earth a chance to survive, but it came at a cost. Humanity would have to bow to the Vraxians, pledging allegiance to their oppressors in exchange for protection. The Council's message suggested that this was the only way to save the planet, to avoid the complete destruction of Earth and its people. The response from the Resistance was immediate. General Marcus Thornton, now a symbol of hope for the human fight, addressed the surviving leaders of the movement. His words were broadcast to every corner of the Earth. "We've fought too long to give up now," he said, his voice unwavering. "The Vraxians came to our world with violence, and they want us to submit to their rule. The Galactic Council wants to treat us like a weak species, but they are wrong. We are human, and we will not bow to anyone. We will fight until the last breath, no matter the cost." The defiance in Marcus's voice ignited a fire in the hearts of humanity. People who had once feared for their survival now stood firm, refusing to be cowed by the Vraxians or the Galactic Council. The resistance, already strong, grew even bolder. The Council's ultimatum had only strengthened their resolve. The Vraxians, however, were not pleased with the resistance's refusal. They had expected Earth to submit. After all, they had destroyed the world's major military forces, crippled its cities, and broken its spirit. They had thought that humanity would bend to their superior power, but they were wrong. The unexpected resilience of the human spirit confused and frustrated them. The Galactic Council, seeing that Earth's resistance was not a simple rebellion but a movement born of a deep, unyielding will, began to reconsider their stance. They had believed that the Vraxians would finish their work quickly, but now it was clear that they were facing something far more difficult than anticipated. Even though the Council was a vast organization with access to incredible technologies, they knew that Earth's defiance might become a powerful force in the galaxy, one they could not easily ignore. In response to the growing tension, the Council offered another message. "You have made your decision," the emissary said, his voice cold. "You have chosen to defy us, and now the consequences will be severe. We will not waste any more time with diplomacy. The Vraxians are authorized to use all available forces to crush this resistance. Your planet will be destroyed." The threat was clear, but humanity's response was not one of fear. There was no turning back now. Earth's leaders had made their choice, and the fight for their world was far from over. The war had reached a new level. With the Galactic Council's ultimatum still fresh in the minds of humanity, there was no turning back. Earth's leaders had chosen defiance over submission, and now they were facing the full wrath of both the Vraxians and the Council. The stakes had never been higher, and humanity's future hung in the balance. Across the planet, the resistance was rallying. General Marcus Thornton and Dr. Emily Grant, along with other leaders of the movement, knew that they had no choice but to fight. The Vraxians were preparing for their final push, and the Galactic Council was standing by, watching as the situation spiraled out of control. The resistance had the power of the ancient weapon hidden beneath the earth, but using it was a dangerous gamble. The time had come for humanity to show its strength. In the ruins of what was once Paris, the resistance gathered in secret. The city had been ravaged by the Vraxian forces, but it was here that the final plan was to be put into action. The weapon, still in its testing phase, had to be deployed in a way that would give humanity the upper hand, if only for a short while. Emily Grant, now leading a group of scientists, worked tirelessly to refine the weapon's power. It was a weapon unlike anything the Vraxians had ever encountered, capable of disabling entire fleets, but with the risk of catastrophic failure. They could not afford to make a mistake. As the preparations continued, Marcus Thornton addressed the gathered resistance fighters. His voice was strong, and his eyes were filled with determination. "We've come this far, and we will not stop now," Marcus said. "We know the odds are against us, but we have something they don't: our will to survive. Every man, woman, and child who fought for Earth has made us stronger. Today, we stand united. We fight for the future, not just for ourselves, but for every generation that will come after us." His words struck a chord with the fighters. They had seen their cities destroyed, their families lost, and their homes taken from them. But they had not lost their spirit. They were human, and they refused to give in. The battle began just before dawn. The Vraxians, confident in their overwhelming power, launched their final assault. Their ships filled the skies, and their forces descended on the remaining human strongholds. The ground shook with the force of their invasion, and the sky was darkened by their weapons. But Earth's resistance was not afraid. They had something the Vraxians could never understand: a deep, unwavering connection to their planet, and a drive to protect it at all costs. The ancient weapon, now fully operational, was deployed in the heart of the battlefield. As it powered up, a low hum filled the air, and a brilliant blue light began to glow from its core. The Vraxian ships, caught off guard, attempted to retaliate, but it was too late. The weapon fired, sending a pulse of energy so powerful that it temporarily disabled the Vraxian shields and weapons. The Vraxian ships froze mid-flight, their massive forms now vulnerable to attack. The resistance fighters seized the opportunity. With a coordinated effort, they launched everything they had. Missiles, explosives, and ground forces struck at the weakened Vraxian ships, hitting them with everything they could muster. The skies were filled with the roar of battle, as humans fought not only for survival, but for the freedom of their world. Despite the power of the weapon, the Vraxians were not easily defeated. They quickly regrouped, using their advanced technology to restore their shields and weapons. But the pulse from the weapon had bought humanity valuable time. It was enough for the resistance to make a real push against the invaders. The battle raged on for hours. Ground forces clashed in the streets, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Vraxians, who had once seemed invincible, now found themselves on the defensive. The resistance had learned how to fight against their advanced technology, using tactics they had never used before. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory. In the midst of the chaos, Marcus Thornton led a daring assault on the Vraxian command ship. With a small group of elite soldiers, he boarded the massive vessel, determined to deal a decisive blow to the invaders' leadership. Inside, they faced fierce resistance, but the human soldiers fought with a ferocity the Vraxians had never seen before. They had nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, Emily Grant stayed behind, monitoring the weapon and making adjustments to its power. She knew that the weapon's energy would soon deplete, and they would need to use it wisely. If they couldn't finish the job before it was too late, Earth's fate would be sealed. As the day wore on, the Vraxians began to realize that the tide of the battle was shifting. Their once unshakable confidence was crumbling. The weapon had given humanity the upper hand, and now they were paying the price for underestimating Earth's will to survive. The Galactic Council, watching from afar, began to question their decision. They had sent the emissary with the hope of ending the conflict quickly, but now they saw something they hadn't expected: humanity's relentless determination to protect their world. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain: Earth was no longer the easy target the Vraxians had believed it to be. The fight for humanity's future was now in full swing, and the outcome was uncertain. The resistance had struck a blow against the invaders, but whether it would be enough to win the war remained to be seen. The war had reached a tipping point. Humanity had fought back with everything it had, using strategies no one thought possible. The ancient weapon, though risky and dangerous, had given the resistance a fighting chance. The Vraxians, once certain of their victory, were now facing a humanity they had underestimated, an unstoppable force powered by determination, courage, and a deep love for their planet. But the war was far from over. The resistance had gained ground, but the Vraxians were relentless. They were regrouping, strengthening their defenses, and preparing for a final assault that could wipe out the human resistance once and for all. The Galactic Council, which had been silently watching the conflict unfold, was growing more concerned by the minute. The Vraxians, their most powerful ally, were now faltering. And if the resistance continued to push forward, the Council knew they could not remain neutral much longer. In the heart of the battle, General Marcus Thornton and his team were deep in enemy territory, planning their next move. The ancient weapon, though effective, had drained much of its energy, and it would need time to recharge before it could be used again. This left the resistance vulnerable, with no backup plan if the Vraxians launched another full-scale attack. Marcus stood with his commanders in a small underground bunker, the walls dimly lit by flickering lights. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with tension and uncertainty. Every day, they learned more about the Vraxian forces, their tactics and their weaknesses. But they also learned something else, something that could change the course of the war. "We've got a chance to end this," Marcus said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "The Vraxians are starting to crack. Their command structure is in chaos. If we hit them now, we can break their resolve for good." His team nodded in agreement, but the weight of the decision hung over them. It wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about taking the fight to the heart of the Vraxian Empire. If they succeeded, they could change everything. But if they failed, it would mean the end of humanity's struggle. "Then we do it," Emily Grant said, her voice resolute. "We're not going to wait for them to strike first. We'll take the fight to their command center." The plan was risky, but it was humanity's best shot at victory. The Vraxian command center, located deep within the heart of their most powerful fleet, was heavily guarded, but the Resistance had learned enough about Vraxian weaknesses to exploit them. The final assault would require precision, stealth, and speed, traits humanity had mastered over months of fighting. Meanwhile, in the skies above Earth, the Vraxians were preparing for their next attack. Their fleet, once a symbol of unstoppable power, was now battered and disorganized. The losses they had suffered in recent battles had shaken them. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. High above the Earth, the Vraxian warlord Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring down at the planet below. His face was filled with rage and frustration. He had never encountered an enemy like humanity before. Their determination was unlike anything he had seen in all his years of conquest. He had watched as entire worlds fell to his forces, but Earth was proving to be different. "We cannot allow this rebellion to continue," Korath growled, his voice full of venom. "Prepare the fleet for a final assault. Earth will fall." But even as he gave the order, he knew that something was wrong. His command structure was crumbling, his generals at odds with one another, and his forces scattered across the planet. The Resistance had not only proven that they could fight, they had shown that they could outlast the Vraxians. Back on Earth, Marcus and his team prepared for their final mission. They knew it would be dangerous, and the odds were stacked against them, but they were ready. The ancient weapon might not be usable right now, but the spirit of humanity was stronger than ever. They had faced impossible odds before and come out victorious. Now, they would face the Vraxians head-on. The Resistance fighters boarded their ships and made their way to the heart of the Vraxian fleet. The skies above Earth were filled with explosions as both sides clashed in a desperate fight for control. The Resistance's plan was to infiltrate the Vraxian flagship, disable their command structure, and force Korath to surrender. As they neared the Vraxian flagship, the Resistance fighters faced a wall of enemy ships, but their tactics were different now. They didn't rely on sheer strength. They used strategy and surprise to slip past the Vraxian defenses. One by one, they disabled the Vraxian ships with pinpoint accuracy, leaving the enemy in disarray. Once they reached the flagship, Marcus led a small team to infiltrate the ship's core. They fought their way through the Vraxian guards, taking out anyone who stood in their path. It was a fierce battle, but humanity's resolve kept them going. Inside the heart of the Vraxian flagship, Marcus confronted Korath. The warlord was a towering figure, his rage barely contained as he saw the Resistance fighters approaching. The two locked eyes, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "You are too late, human," Korath hissed. "Earth will fall, and you will be crushed beneath the weight of our might." Marcus didn't flinch. Not today. With a final powerful strike, Marcus disabled Korath's command center, sending the Vraxian warlord into chaos. The rest of the Vraxian fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, began to falter. The Resistance had struck at the heart of the Vraxian Empire, and the blow was enough to send them reeling. The battle wasn't over, But the Vraxians had lost their most important advantage. Humanity had struck a decisive blow, and the war was far from finished. But for the first time in months, hope was on the horizon. The battle had reached its climax. The Vraxians, once unstoppable in their conquest of the galaxy, were now on the defensive. Their fleets were scattered, their leadership in disarray, and their control over Earth slipping away with each passing day. Humanity, against all odds, had proven that it could resist, fight back, and even win. The resistance had struck at the heart of the Vraxian Empire, and now the warlord Korath was no longer a threat. But while the Vraxian forces had been shaken, they were not yet defeated. The Galactic Council, still watching from the shadows, had begun to recognize that the situation had escalated beyond their control. No longer could they remain neutral in this fight. Earth had shown that it was not only capable of surviving, it had the potential to change the course of galactic history. In the days following the strike on the Vraxian flagship, General Marcus Thornton and Dr. Emily Grant met with the leaders of the resistance in a hidden underground facility. The walls of the room were lined with maps of Earth's remaining battle zones, and every corner was filled with quiet whispers of hope and determination. The final assault was coming, and they knew it would be the most difficult challenge yet. "We've hurt them, there's no doubt about it," Marcus said, his voice steady. "But they'll come for us again. The Vraxians will regroup, and we have to be ready for their final push. We need to take the fight to them, while we still have the momentum." Emily nodded, her face tense with concern. "We've used the weapon as much as we can, and our forces are spread thin. If we're going to win, it has to be now. We've seen that the Vraxians are weaker than they were before, but we'll need every ally we can get." The final mission had to be bold, a strike that would crush the Vraxians once and for all. The resistance had one key advantage: their knowledge of Vraxian technology and weaknesses. With Marcus's leadership and Emily's scientific expertise, they had devised a plan that could wipe out the remaining Vraxian forces. But there was a risk. The final battle would require them to infiltrate the most heavily guarded Vraxian stronghold on Earth, their main command center, deep in the heart of the capital city. As the resistance fighters prepared for the mission, the last of the Vraxian forces began to gather in the skies above Earth. Their ships, though fewer than before, were still formidable. They had reorganized under new leadership, determined to make one final stand against the humans. The atmosphere on Earth was tense. Cities lay in ruins, but the people had not lost their will. Across the globe, survivors came together, forming alliances and rallying around the Resistance's final plan. The hope of humanity now rested on one last strike, one final chance to rid Earth of the Vraxian threat once and for all. On the day of the final assault, the Resistance launched their attack with everything they had. The skies were filled with fire as they fought their way toward the Vraxian command center. Ships zipped through the air, dodging enemy fire and launching missiles with precision. The ground forces, led by Marcus, made their way through the ruined streets, determined to reach the heart of the Vraxian stronghold. As the battle raged on, the Galactic Council watched from afar, their emissaries observing the humans' determination with growing awe. They had never seen anything like this before. Earth, a planet once considered insignificant, was now the focal point of a galactic conflict. The Council, though reluctant to interfere, knew that if humanity won, they would be forced to reconsider their policies regarding Earth's future. Inside the heart of the Vraxian command center, the battle was fierce. Marcus and his team fought through waves of Vraxian soldiers, each step taking them closer to the core of the enemy's operations. The Resistance fighters, armed with advanced weapons and a fierce will to survive, fought with every ounce of strength they had. They were not just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for the future of their species. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Marcus and his team reached the central control room. The Vraxian leaders, once so confident in their victory, now stood in a panic, realizing that their time had run out. Their command center was failing, their ships were in disarray, and their forces were in retreat. Korath, though weakened, was still alive. His eyes burned with fury as he faced Marcus one last time. "You think you've won, human," he spat. "Earth will never be free. The galaxy will always be under our control." Marcus, bloodied but determined, stepped forward. Not anymore. With a final strike, Marcus disabled the core systems of the Vraxian command center, sending a shockwave through the facility. The Vraxian forces, leaderless and broken, began to fall apart. The last of the Vraxian ships began to retreat, leaving Earth's skies clear for the first time in years. As the dust settled, Marcus and his team stood victorious. The Vraxian threat had been destroyed, and Earth was finally free. The news of Earth's victory spread across the planet. The Resistance, once small and scattered, had become a symbol of hope and strength for the entire world. Humanity had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could fight, survive, and ultimately triumph. The Galactic Council, witnessing humanity's incredible resilience, could no longer deny the truth. Earth was no longer just a planet to be conquered. It was a force to be reckoned with. The Council, once indifferent, now recognized that Earth had earned its place among the stars. And so, Earth's final stand was not just a victory over the Vraxians. It was a declaration to the galaxy that humanity would never be silenced. The fight was over, but humanity's journey had only just begun.